With D2C brands making such a strong presence in India now, and so many startups coming in fact, I've had cases where we have a lot of people who are actually manufacturers also looking at trying to create brands. Well, they create labels for sure, but they want a pie, piece of that pie. Are there just too many players operating in this field today? Is there going to be some kind of a fallout? Will few people remain, or this is always continue to be a very crowded place with people trying to come in? And I know of companies today who only do shorts, and it's such a niche category. Like, for example, Go Colors only does leggings, or started out that way. So the question that I'm asking is, how is this going to overall impact the overall fashion business? Because if people are going to be just focusing on giving certain categories, then will lifestyle brands over a period of time really mean anything to people? Well, what is the relevance that brands will have, and how will they continue to connect with consumers over a period of time? Of course, some brands mean something because they've already been created and they have a certain salience with the consumer today and will continue to have that salience. But for the new brand who's trying to mean something and has probably created a niche for himself in that particular small zone, will he really be able to grow larger with so many things happening today?
No, I think we should be clear what is the definition of lifestyle. For example, a brand, doing all the categories, suppose it's doing a shirt, jeans and shorts and all that. Yes. I won't call that as a lifestyle brand. See, the lifestyle brands actually is nothing but you're trying to leverage the strength or equity you have created for a brand. Okay. And either you can do it yourself, or the better way to do it, that's what all the international brands do, to find an expert and then license to that expert. So that's how you have very large footwear people who may have Luxottica is a good example. They own the license for eyewear for everyone. But you may say that, Tommy Hilfiger has got it's a lifestyle brand because it has also got eyewear. But it has got nothing to do with the eyewear which is being sold as Tommy Hilfiger. So in fashion, in my view, lifestyle definition is just milking the brand you have created. That's all. It's a milking strategy. That it's not that, it's a strategy saying that, this is how I'm going to create the brand. And I don't think there is any such objective. It's more about milking. I have created a very good brand and then let me milk it. An easier way to milk it is to find an expert and then get the licensing income. So that is the lifestyle brand. Coming on the other side, if you really look at it, the D2C brand, for them to succeed, because see, there are the market became very crowded and many of the manufacturers started becoming thought that they have created a brand because the platforms, the e-commerce platforms in India, they were hungry to establish themselves in India. In that hunger to establish, in meeting that hunger, they actually funded in a way all these brands. The funding could be in terms of discount, it could be in terms of working capital, because they may buy up the stock and keep it. And so they actually, in a way, help them to increase the turnover to whatever, 50 crores, 60 crores, 70 crores and 100 crores. But the success of these brands will fully depend on how long these platforms will fund them. And very clearly you are getting now signs that platforms are not going to fund them. They are pushing the risk back to the manufacturers. So you are going to find these guys are going to wither, because if you don't have the funding, how you are going to do it? So because you have built a model on a certain assumption, certain funding, certain easy way of getting sales through discounts. So if you don't have that facility, we do not know how long they are going to survive. So it is better to, if you're talking about a specialist brand, even if it is in the D2C space, it is better to create on a certain strength. For example, say Maneuver, ethnic. So like that, if you can, there are brands, for example, oversized women brand. It could have a very large potential because that's a niche gap in the market, and then there is a thing, and then typically, that segment of the market is very loyal because they don't get dresses, And then if you're able to have a connect with that customer, then you can build a very long-term, brand. So you need to identify those niches and then create a brand for which can stand, for the imagery it is creating, for the product, both, functional as well as emotional benefit of the brand, rather than, stand on the funding or the doles, dished out by the e-commerce players.
That's very, very interesting. I want to actually, since we are discussing these things, want to get to a very interesting question that I found very interesting. Is this whole concept which fashion brands have created around seasons. And today, in fact, it has got so ingrained into that we teach it in fashion schools. So people who come out, think seasonally. They don't really think go-to-market cycles. In a sense, that is what it's supposed to be. But they think in terms of seasons, etc., which then forces businesses to actually forecast for a certain larger period of time. I feel it also makes inventory more efficient. But these new D2C players, the channels particularly, they created their businesses and they did not probably study the the rule book on fashion business, and they didn't really think of seasons. They just told people, "Mal hai, de do, let's just sell it." And this has kind of created a completely two different thinking processes in the market. When there is a separate supply chain that is now trying to work towards the D2C businesses, and there's a separate type of supply chain that is working on the legacy businesses. How do you think this is going to play out? Do you feel seasons as a concept will die out? Do you feel that go-to markets will become more periodic or whatever, or different logics will emerge? How do you feel this is going to play out? Because the reason I'm asking this is because a lot of people, even today in the fashion industry, don't really differentiate or understand the difference between these two.
No, I think we should look at it, season purely from the point of view that, for example, in winter you have to produce clothes which are, which can protect, consumers from winter. And then similarly in summer you have to produce something which is lighter, could be horse sleeve or whatever it is. I think, the season should be restricted to that. Rest of it, I think, today I don't think everyone is now moving towards saying that, and it's not that something, this is not done, only with after D2C brands have come in. Zara has done it for many years.
Yes.
So everyone has done, they have broken the mold. Many of the people who have broken the mold. The advantage, actually, the problem of why Zara has done it or H&M has done, why the retailers have done it and why the brands have not done it, is mainly because you had an end-to-end control of the channel. For Zara, it is only their store, so they can do anything they want. Whereas if you are a brand selling to multiple channels, the channel partner will ask you this season, autumn, winter season, you give me autumn merchandise, you give me winter merchandise, you give me summer merchandise, you give me spring merchandise. Yes. So the complication of channel has got moved back to the product actually. But if you are operating in one channel, I think even the other companies would have shifted towards when the market wants, I'll produce. Because typically, I think in a way, this is one of the things I started saying, the difference between FMCG, things efficiency. Here, since people are so obsessed with the product, in a way they are lazy about thinking of anything else. So, a department store person who is buying, I think it's very simple for that person to go to some fashion show and then book orders and then forget about it. Because someone else may take the risk, or the company would have given him a budget, and as long as he's within the budget, he's fine. So that's the thought process, and they don't think efficiency. But when the questions start coming, what is the inventory turn? Which I think the questions are now coming to this business. I don't think there was this question of inventory turn in fashion business at least till 2022. So now I think when these questions come in, I think things will change. Season is more towards the kind of product you have to make when the product is going to the market in the month of September vis-a-vis something going in the month of July. Yes. That is what, for example, in India, it's about festival. You can't produce, something which is ordinary looking and then say that, no, I will sell it in Diwali. So you should have that sense. You cannot, completely ignore the season from the market point of view. But it's not that, that is the guiding principle. I think that guiding principle came because of the demands of the channel. Demands of the channel is like that, and then everyone fell into that line. And then when even the channel management is going to question the buyer on inventory turns, even he will also change. Yes. So everyone will change, and I think that's what is happening. I don't think it's a question of D2C. It's simple, no, because I'm directly giving it to the consumer, so I know exactly what that person is buying. So I think we should not give too much credit to D2C that they foresaw that whole thing. It's a question of channel simplicity, which has really helped Zara, and it is helping D2C.
I really feel we should give some credit to Zara, not to the D2C channels. I agree. I think it was more that they didn't read the rule book. Yeah. I don't think they understood the concept. They had a channel, they needed product to sell, and they just started selling it. No, this has been fantastic. And Suresh, I just want to now move this conversation to slightly more on the supply chain side. You've always maintained we have overly complicated our supply chain in apparel, and it's ideally not that complicated. Yet products take so long to manufacture. And you've also seen this whole supply chain for almost 15 years plus now. How do you see it has evolved, and where do you think it is going to go next? The whole supply chain of the apparel business.
No, I think, most important thing, problem is the thought process of the people in the industry is to say that, we have the most complicated things and everything we do. So I think if you remember, I've always said, no, this is the simplest product because there is one cloth, there is one thread and one button is there. That's all three products vis-a-vis so many, components of a car, for example. So I think, first of all, the mindset change has to happen, saying it's a simple product. Okay, it is changing season by season. That's a complexity. But there's no complexity in terms of raw material, on getting all these things put together and assembling together. I don't think there's a major... that mindset change should come saying that I'm dealing with a simple product. So once you know that I'm dealing with a simple product, I think you will change the way you're working. The way I think it is evolving is, if you really look at it, what I used to call as generations of manufacturing or sourcing. Initially, it was all about any company that starts will always start with its own manufacturing in any category, and maybe 100 years before that was the case with any of the fashion companies also. And I think when really the demand, for example, if you really look at it in US also, the demand for clothing, I think, started becoming larger and larger because the entire consumerism and all really started taking shape when the baby boomers, started spending money. And the people who were born during Second World War, they started spending money in 60s and more 70s. When they could not, because being a smaller country, with a certain population, you can't, have manufacturing you can't go beyond a point, beyond a certain level in terms of the number of pieces you can make. Then you should set up large number of factories. Then as the market, as the per capita income is going up, then the salary levels was also going up. Then China, I think, provided that big difference and then really gave that opportunity to outsource. So the entire fashion industry moved from making your own to buying from outside. So that is the entire, the sourcing part, which I think, they were doing through some third party and all that, more like I have an agent and that agent will go and source it for me and then give it to me. Then the next stage is all about, building that strategic relationship with even if there is a third party, even if there is someone in between, but they were able to build strategic relationship with the vendor so that they are able to start working on, in terms of sharing some data, and if something is doing well, produce faster and give it. Supplying on something, if you know the inventory data, you hold some inventory and then supply to the brands. Some sort of a strategic relationship developed. The fourth generation is all about, where I think more or less this in between, if you're not adding great value, the middleman, Li and Feng kind of people were disappearing. And factories, the companies were establishing direct relationship with the brands and also providing design support. So it is not, just supplying. You don't, for example, we are talking about certain categories. I may not be a specialist. I may just take the design of the vendor and then produce it. So that's, I would say, the fourth generation. And I would say the fifth generation is now about outsourcing it completely. When I say outsourcing it completely, it is something like, if you really look at the future of the companies, the future of the companies are the companies which do not do everything themselves, but companies which know how to get the best, from wherever the source is available. You may say that I will just do the product. Rest of it, I will outsource. So your ability to build an ecosystem around you, which you can tap on, is much more important for your success than saying I'm an expert in everything end to end. So if you really look at the entire value chain from the raw material to the consumer, and you just pick up one small place where I'm going to really add value deep into that place, and outsource the rest of it. I wouldn't call it outsourcing, because the outsourcing becomes a very transactional thing. But I have an ecosystem that ecosystem today, actually companies can even have their own competition as part of that ecosystem.
Okay.
So not necessary that, so it is developing in that manner that I build an ecosystem around you. I will really focus on this narrow and do that exceedingly well. And I have the ecosystem where that company will do exceedingly well in that part, which I am taking it from them. So that is the way I think it's going to evolve. So whether, for example, whether you can completely outsource supply chain, that means you may not have, you may have ideators in your team, in the company team, but may not have someone who will convert that idea into sketches and technical for giving it for manufacturing and all that. Some broad idea give, and then have someone who can actually convert that idea into end products, and not only end products, and then supplying it at the right time, and then if you're even able to reach to the consumer, you keep adding value. So that's how I think you have to build your ecosystem. Then that is the ecosystem every company will have to build, so that you really do, because today the competition is so intense. Unless you are sort of superb in something you're doing, you're not going to win in the market. And you can't be superb in everything, you're doing. So you need to pick your place where you can really add value and build that ecosystem.
Oh, this is I think very, very good insight for all our viewers. I have another very interesting question that I had in mind. Technology is today playing a very important part in almost everything we do, and particularly in the fashion business, we have seen the emergence of these D2C businesses, the various channels. I think now omni-channel is becoming very. So how do you? And I would like to kind of differentiate in two ways, which is warehouse to consumer. And how we are reaching the consumer. It could be that part of the supply chain, and also the consumer interface, what it does for you. And how does the product reach the warehouse as the other space that I see technology possibly coming in? Or if there is any other way in which you look at it, if you could just share with us, where do you think that technology is going to play a very large role going forward? Or how is this going to change, what we are doing?
No, I think today still, we are looking at technology on a very siloed basis. So you look at, what's that supply chain digitization I will do, yes. What customer personalization I will do. How do I get, my product up in say, a e-commerce platform? So you sort of look at it in a very siloed manner. I think what is going to happen is, as we go forward, I think to significant two big things. One is a complete single view of the inventory on one side, and then single view of the customer on the other side. Because if you know both, then you can connect both easily. So that single view of inventory is about inventory of raw material available with your the last end point, the first point on the left hand side, from the company side. Consumer, if consumer is on the extreme right, the raw material on the extreme left. So you should know the inventory from there till wherever, in the warehouse, stores, everywhere. And that inventory should be single view of that inventory you should have. If you have that single view, then you can use that inventory the way you want. So that I think is the most important thing, which means you are connecting to sometimes you may have to connect your warehouses to your stores to the vendors, and that's why ecosystem becomes important, because he is not a vendor, he is part of your ecosystem. Someone who is part of your ecosystem, you don't mind sharing the information. So that is what you will do, and similarly the one view of the consumers, and that is where of course D2C brands have an advantage, because if you are doing both brick and mortar and online, you have a complete knowledge of the consumer behavior in the stores, but you don't have that online. Whereas D2C brands know their consumer intimately, because just by putting a crawler, they know exactly the behavior of the consumer, and they have a complete view of the consumer. Once you have a complete view of the consumer and complete view of the inventory, you can bring them together very easily. So that is where I think the technology will pivot. How do you bring the inventory and consumer together? Through have one view of the inventory and one view of the consumer.
I think it's a very strategic insight, Suresh, that you've given us. So Suresh, thanks for this amazing insights that you've given to us on various aspects of the lifestyle business. So any last words from you, anything that we missed out, anything you want to share with our viewers?
I think it's going to be very interesting times for fashion industry. Definitely the conversation is going to shift more towards efficiency, and it's not efficiency in place of the product. The winners are going to be who are going to do both right. I think that's going to be important.
So thank you so much, Suresh. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your experience and thoughts with us. I think this has been an extremely enriching session for me, and I'm sure our viewers will also find it very, very good. So thank you again so much, Suresh.
My pleasure, Anindya.
Thank you.
Sure.